What's up, everybody? I figured I'd just shoot a little video on the topic. Reworking the catch can setup on the Audi. Um, it's getting to be like winter time now, so we have pretty cold temperatures here. Pretty common to have temperatures in the teens or 20s in the morning and then get up to the 40s or so, 30s or 40s during the day. Sometimes it stays in the 20s during the day. Basically, I did have a catch can already installed that was mounted down here. You can kind of see if I can get the light right there and there. I have two holes where I had a catch can mounted kind of underneath and tucked away under that overflow tank. Basically what I had was, this is where the stock pancake valve goes, if you're familiar with that on these 1.8T engines, where the hard line would run kind of along the back. What I did instead was routed a line up along here, over and down to the catch can as the feed, and then down there you can see it through the manifold runner a little bit, I think. Let me see if I can. Yeah, you can kind of see that T down there right between these two runners right here. The output of that is where the stock PCV valve went, and I just had a line that ran straight over into the can. So that worked fine, but now that it was getting cold, what I noticed was I was having a lot of condensation buildup. The can would fill up within 2 weeks or something like that, and it was almost entirely just water. So in efforts to try to avoid that, what I decided to do was I did a little research and kind of learned that though it's tucked away, it's kind of in like the colder part of the engine bay, and keeping the catch cans warm will reduce the condensation they build up, because I guess as you pass the warm vapor from the engine through the cold can, that's where you're building up all your condensation. So keeping it in a hotter spot warms it up faster, so it and the gases are of similar temperatures, and it makes less condensation. So all that novel going through, I'll put a picture, go ahead and overlay here of where the can was, and I already kind of mentioned how I had it routed. What I decided to do instead was to mount it essentially right there. So I've taken my line from the intake tube, switched its direction, it runs around and then goes over basically there. So that'll be the vacuum side. And then that T that I mentioned again down there, I rotated it 90 degrees. So instead of pointing this way, it now points straight up. And then I have a hose coming off of it for now that comes out here. This will be from the engine. Effectively, what I plan on doing here in a few days, once I get the part, I'm going to replace that T with a straight piece of pipe, and then the factory elbow for this portion right here actually has a spur off of it that normally goes to the stock hard line that runs to there, and I'm just going to run this line straight off of that T, so it'll just go just like that to grab the vapor from that vent tube on the back of the engine. Basically, this valve cover spot and then the lower crankcase spot are tied together on the back of the engine with a hard line. So basically what I did was, I have this cheapo eBay catch can. It is like a baffled thing. It's got these little things in there, and this comes off if you want to put like steel wool inside of it to try to increase some of the capturing. But basically it just has a little 2-bolt flange. It's got a little dipstick on it. That goes on there. You can kind of see what we're working with. Basically the operation here is going to be to mount this guy. See if it'll sit there. It won't, but basically mount that guy there. The line going right there will come to the far or the close side for us as the inlet. This one will stay underneath and go to the far side as the outlet. And then basically the can will rest underneath. When moving it from this side and removing everything, I noticed a few problems with the kit. It's been on the car for a couple months. Basically, these things were O-ringed into the body, and as you can see, there's a part of one of them. The O-rings were completely shot already, dried up, torn. So what I did is this is like my favorite gasket maker on the face of the planet. I went ahead and used some of that on the threads, cleaned it all up, brake cleaned everything, cleaned it nice. Put a little bit on the threads, and then just ran those in there and tightened them up so they won't leak. And then if you're wondering what this ugly nut is on the bottom, if you can't tell, I've gnarred the shit out of this thing trying to get it off before. So this is basically the canister. Let me see if I can't set you guys down for a second. So this is basically the canister that, you know, threads on here to capture all the stuff. Well, this particular one doesn't have a drain hole or anything like that, and it also doesn't have any type of nut on here by default. It's just flat. So essentially you just have to grab this similar to like what an oil filter would be and just rip it off. Well, the problem is when this thing gets cold and hot and all the stuff and the O-ring right there kind of seals, this thing gets really tight and hard to remove, to the point where, especially when it was in that old location, I could not get it off, and I'd had to resort to like using like a channel lock type plier, and that's how I fucked this up. So what I did was, you can kind of see in there, I basically just took a bolt, drilled a hole, tightened the crap out of this bolt with my impact, so well over 100 foot-pounds, with some silicone, again, that right stuff on it. And basically all this does now is it acts as a means for me to turn this whole housing. So this isn't a drain bolt, it's just going to act as a structural member. So now I can put a wrench on here and use this to turn this off. So when this thing's mounted and super tight, all I have to do is come in here, put a wrench on it, bust it off, we're good to go. So I'll go ahead and pause it for now and go ahead and resume once I get a little more progress. I plan on getting this thing mounted up and getting the lines routed, and then I'll show you what it looks like at the end. Alright guys, back with a little update. Got everything mounted up so you can kind of see what we're working with. Its end does look a little tweaked. Bracket's a little flexible, but yeah, so basically that line there is the one that runs off the T. Like I mentioned before, I've got a little rubber P-clamp here just to kind of tidy it up. As I mentioned, this is only temporary until I get this new rubber elbow here that has the jut right off top, and when that comes, it'll just come straight out into there. So that'll be nice. You can see the right line is the one fed from the inlet tube, so it's in from the engine to the left, through the baffle, out, back into the recirculation. It's just tied up with some zip ties around and kind of, you know, sits underneath that little cowl. Yeah, it definitely is tight for those of you who may, you know, have this car and want to do something similar. It definitely is snug down here around the oil feed line for the turbo, as well back here. You can see that little stud right there. That guy was like a little plastic square that was used to hold on that heat shield. You can see mine's all knacked up anyway. I just took the little plastic nut off and then cut like 1/8 of an inch off the end of the stud just with some hard like wire cutters, and it came right off, just to give myself some more room when I spin the thing on. We've got our 2 bolts. For now it's a through bolt, and then right now I just have a self tapper in the bottom spot. When I go to work Monday, I'm going to grab my riv nut tool and then put a riv nut in that bottom spot to take an M6 bolt, so that way we've got some good fasteners on both sides. So it's definitely overall not as like clean in my opinion as what I had, just given that before it was all tucked down there, you literally didn't see any of it. But from a functional perspective, you know, once I move this line to go right there and it doesn't run over the valve cover and all that, it really won't be that noticeable. And I'm hoping that, given that it's over here on the hot side of the engine, it'll be a lot less prone to build up as much condensation, A, and then B, let me see if I can't get the tool real quick. So that bottom nut I put on there was a 16, so yeah, the goal is to basically just be able to come in here with a ratchet and just, and you can kind of see it working to tighten and loosen this thing. So that'll work out well. I can get to it, and that should help getting this thing on and off as best I can. And then from there, we'll have to just check and see how it goes. That's easy to get to now. I will say, under there it was a complete pain to get to. I had to pretty much take the coolant expansion tank and lay it forward every time I even needed to get to the little dipstick thing. It's got this little, just like screw on dipsticky guy to kind of judge how much stuff's in there. So accessibility is definitely increased now, which is a good thing. So, but anyway, just wanted to make this video. If you guys have any questions specifically, if you're a 1.8T person and you need more specifics on how the connections were made or what have you, feel free to drop a comment or whatever. But yeah, appreciate you guys watching. More Miata content coming up soon. Going to be getting the car and bringing it back to Indiana on the 28th of December. So next Saturday, the 22nd, we drive out to Maryland for the holidays, spend some time with the family, and then Donnie and I trailer the car back here on the 28th. So not too long, we'll be getting the Miata in here and start wrenching on that. So until then, I'll see you guys later.